So we're going to deal here with a rumor that has been circulating a little bit on the internet. Its origin is a conference in the United Kingdom by Father Chazal, who is formerly a priest of the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X, and is now with, and I hate to use the word "the resistance" because it's really
Hmm.
kind of a conglomeration of individuals. There's not really any hierarchical or ordered structure. So he's one of the priests that is numbered among the groups that say they're with, quote, resistance.
Hmm.
Resistance to what? As Father Daniel Thiemann explained in his conference on this topic about 10 years ago. Not really sure. But in any event, in the conference, he's asked a question by a lady because he spoke quite highly of Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano and Vigano's kind of coming to tradition. And the women, again, it's amazing to see this. So there's a bishop that does what we in tradition have been praying for years. Don't just do half measures, come all the way over, which Archbishop
Hmm.
Vigano has done. He's given up the new mass. He only
Yep.
says the traditional mass. He's not just criticizing Pope Francis, but sees the connection to Vatican II. And to Father Chazal credit, although I disagree with on many things, he says this is what we've been praying for all these
Yep.
years. The woman says, how could you even say something nice about it? Paraphrasing, nice about him. He's not a real bishop. He was consecrated in the Novus Ordo. And all Father Chazal says, this is the whole source of the rumor, and he's very uncomfortable. He just says, let's just say he's done the necessaries. The
Hmm.
necessaries. That's it. That's all he says. Father Hugo runs with this and says that means he was conditionally reconsecrated. So all we know is that there's this offhanded comment that Father Chazal made that Archbishop Vigano did something about his consecration. Now, first of all, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was reconsecrated. And again, there's speculation that it was Bishop. He probably thinks he's an archbishop sometimes. Bishop Richard Williamson, who also was expelled from the Society of St. Pius X in 2012.
Hmm.
Now, I am aware Archbishop Vigano has spoken to Bishop Williamson. They seem to have been in some communication, but there has been no statement that this has been done. And many people are sort of pressing for that. And I'll give you my take on this. Uh, for all his flaws, I think Bishop Williamson's approach to this is actually going to would have been, if he is involved, the approach of Archbishop Lefebvre and the Society of St. Pius X for decades, which has been, if any person, again, mostly priests, there's not really bishops who've come over, but mostly priests who want to leave the conciliar church. They come to the society, and often it's the priests themselves that raise
Hmm.
to say, "Hey, am I validly ordained? I don't want to have doubt about this." The response of the Society of St. Pius X has always been, we will investigate it for you. And they conduct a thorough investigation to the extent that there are video evidence of the ordination. They look at it and then they reach a judgment. Is there a moral certainty that you were actually ordained? Is the form and matter there? Or is there a reasonable doubt? And if there is a doubt, we will conditionally reordain. Speaking about a priest, it would be consecrate for a bishop. And that's been their approach to do this. Now, why might there be doubt? Again, Archbishop Lefebvre himself, he says this many times, the Lille Sermon, famous Lille Sermon, one of them,
Hmm.
that these are conferring doubtful sacraments. He says in an open letter to confused Catholics. What he says by that is, okay, the bare minimum of form and matter may be in these new sacraments. But the problem is that they often form, first of all, a counter intention, that the rite itself permits a bishop conferring to actually form a contention counter to the church. And secondly, because they promote, we talked about in our first story, ad libbing, it's very often that the form gets changed, that the words get changed. We saw this in mass baptisms that even the conciliar church, the new church, the diocese declared were invalid for decades because the priest was changing the words of baptism, which are
Hmm.
the easiest to get right. And therefore, they required conditional rebaptism. And so Archbishop Lefebvre, for these two reasons that you don't really know, like you could pretty much assume before 1962, priests were using the words in the book. It was by the book. Frankly, it was another reason for Latin. It's a lot harder to ad lib in a foreign language. But secondly, that they may actually not just have a docile intention, they may form a counter intention, and you need to look at this. Now, the Society of St. Pius X, I know for a fact, has done both. In some cases, they've concluded there is no doubt, no reasonable doubt that you were not actually ordained, or okay, we may have been ordained. It's very possible, but there is some doubt. So we will, to avoid any qualms of conscience on mostly the priest's part, do this. Now, this is always done outside of the public sphere. There's never a press release put out. They don't announce it. Why? Because it's actually a private matter. It is a matter of the priest's conscience. It's a matter that involves discretion. It is a conditional rendering of the sacrament. Therefore, it's one that's done for certainty and is not one that needs to be put in public light. It would cause scandal because it's basically saying we have doubt about the bishop that did this, and there is no reason. Again, we forget that a lot. Just because something's true doesn't mean you're free to talk about it. Detraction is saying something true when there's no need to do so, right? So to detract from a bishop who simulated a sacrament or potentially didn't ordain, if you need to talk about it, then you can. But if there's no need, if you can just privately do this, you don't have necessarily a just cause to bring this forward. And if the priest can say, which I've heard priests answer, you don't need to, are you really a priest, right? The Society of St. Pius X, Bishop Fellay has taken care of the situation. I can assure you Bishop Fellay is satisfied. Without saying whether it was because they found it to be clear or not, that's the case. So my own opinion is I would not be surprised if Archbishop Vigano, who's learning a lot, said, I wonder, maybe I was not consecrated, went to Bishop Williamson, maybe another bishop, I don't know, but likely Williamson, and Williamson did the same thing, and either concluded there's nothing to worry about, or if you really are troubled by conscience, I think there may be sufficient doubt that I would be free conditionally to do this, and it frankly should be left at that. Archbishop Vigano is comfortable, whatever the necessaries, and I think that phrase could refer to either one of these outcomes, and should move on. And frankly, I think this is where I do agree with Father Chazal. He should be, accepted and praised, Archbishop Vigano, for what he's done. He rightly, Father Chazal calls out, look, everybody's flocking around Bishop Strickland, good what he did, but look, he's not really with us. I mean, he's not there. He's still saying the new mass. I mean, he has certainly taken a hit for something close to tradition, but here's a bishop who's really gone the full way. And, you shouldn't be standing up in conferences saying, oh, is he a real bishop? And nitpicking this. If a bishop has looked at this, and if the Archbishop Vigano himself, who is clearly well enough aware of what's going on in the church now to be concerned with this, has concluded, I needed this or I don't, and it's done. And we should just take him for what he's saying and not get caught up in that. So that's my take on it. I don't know if you have a different perspective, Murray.
Yeah, a few things. I think jumping on your point, I think we need to be extremely empathetic and charitable towards other traditionalists who have different takes on things than we do. And one of because we're in such a complicated situation where there's a cloud over the church, and so we need to be charitable. If they don't, if the resistance doesn't agree with your take on something, if even sedevacantists don't agree with you on everything, there needs to be a spirit of charity, understanding that there is a great a cloud over the church at the moment. A couple notes as well. The conditional sacraments was a huge issue, especially during the Second Vatican Council, but unfortunately never got spoken of. A good place to go to for that is Archbishop Lefebvre's interjections at the council. He saw that as a primary issue that needed to be solved. I think a lot of that's in the Bishop Speaks. If you take a look at that book. Another issue here is like you said. A lot of the times we got people being silly with the words. We got people being silly with the form and the matter and the intention. The thing that Archbishop Lefebvre, as you mentioned, had a problem with is setting up that counter intention. So is that going to be the case with everyone in the Novus Ordo? I would say, of course not. I think there are good Catholics within the Novus Ordo. Could there be situations that there is a counter intention set up? I think that is manifest as well. I would have a few things that worry me about this.
Mhm.
I think the archbishop should be clear that he thinks that and maybe he doesn't, and that's fine. We can talk about that the right of new consecration of bishops is valid if it's done correctly and with the proper intention. I'd like to see what he says about that. I also have a concern about the sacraments that he conferred as a bishop and what this would mean for those people. I don't know if he has ordained any priests. I don't know how many faithful he has confirmed. Maybe that might just need to be left to Archbishop Vigano to deal with on his own. But that could scandalize quite a few people that are now questioning their own validity of the sacraments. And the final point I would make is Archbishop Vigano was consecrated by Pope John Paul II. So the fact that there even is a question about this raises some huge concerns. This is the supreme pontiff of the church that we're now hearing might have made that Archbishop Vigano had questions about his intention or maybe the form in the matter. I would like to see it be addressed, but then again, I think we should have that charitable spirit towards the Archbishop and assume that he knows these things and is dealing with it on his own. But those are just a few of the concerns that I would have regarding the whole situation.
And yeah, I underscore your first point there. We're in a mess. We're in a titanic situation here,
Mhm.
and although we certainly should maintain our positions, and like I'll be very clear, I completely disagree with the resistance. I
Same
think
here. Yep.
it's now been 11 years since they said, "Hey, there's an agreement that's just about to be announced," and it
Mhm.
hasn't happened yet. My approach at the time, as I heard a priest say of the society, um, no one is telling me to say the no mass. No one's doing this. Trust me, if they actually signed an agreement that did that, I'd be out the door tomorrow. I'd be
Yep.
right behind him. Right. So
Mhm.
I agree, but you don't react when it's just a rumor, when it's just happened. So
Yep.
I disagree with them. But that being said, it doesn't mean that everything they say or everything they say or do is wrong. And you have to sort of acknowledge, they maybe are reacting not the way we would to the facts on the ground, but we don't need to attack them as or even say the content, any of as you say, and even those coming from the new mass, like I said. And I
Mhm.
always say, because oh, they can't be saved, they're in the new mass. They can't. I say, look,
Mm.
there are, I'm sure, a lot of people, and I think I pray and hope my grandparents are one of these that were saved despite the new mass. So again,
Mhm.
not because of it, but they did have a faith. They were nourished by something, even though it wasn't the new mass. But in spite of it, they were able to persevere in striving for holiness. And that's, I think, what we have to approach. And some of it we just have to leave in the hands of God. I mean, your point about Vigano, even if he is, I trust it to him. It's again not something he should make an announcement like, oh, by the way, I contacted these priests and told them I don't think you're
Right.
validly
Yeah.
ordained. He should deal with that and if reach out to them and say, this is what's happened. I think you should do this. Um,
Mhm.
and I think we should just leave, certain things we don't have to know everything, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Everything. So very good. Well, complicated situation, but that's our take on it.